Hello everyone! Welcome to the tutorial on Python Basics, and today we are actually going to talk about what is programming. So this is the very first tutorial of this entire series, and let me remind you quickly what we are exactly going to do in this entire tutorial of series of Python with Basics. So actually, as per the format says in each and every tutorial, we are actually going to have three basic steps. We are going to understand what is the entire chapter all about and feature out the important keynote of the chapter. Then we are going to discuss about the basic agendas of that particular chapter which we would be covering in that specific tutorial. And then we will talk about all the nitty-gritty details and what you can do along with that specific subject once following the tutorial. So we'll also be having lots of quizzes, programming problems, questions which you want to follow and solve by yourself. And in case if you get stuck somewhere, we actually have a discussion forum as well, where you can post your questions and queries regarding any sort of topic you are confused. So let's go ahead and talk about programming. If you are not very familiar to programming, and you might have seen lots of programmers around the world, you might have noticed there are a couple of people who have this daunting looking screen with random colors. Usually dark and contrast with number of variables running up and around, along with a very sophisticated OS, and they are obviously quite busy often coding any sort of algorithm or program onto their computer which is out of your understanding. So what I want to first define is program is basically if you have any sort of problem and you have a way to solve it, and develop an algorithm and solve it by yourself. Then actually it doesn't matter. You're putting some language into use or putting into computer or not, but you're actually doing some sort of programming. So programming and all this computer stuff is pretty interesting nowadays. And basically the youth is catching up due to various reasons. One reason, the opportunity is very big over there, but that's not the only reason. Apart from that, actually we have lots of things going on. For example, there have been a lot of movies which actually feature programming and daunting screens, which looks pretty cool to each and every youth. So they try to engage themselves in programming, but when they see that the entire process is pretty complex, often most of them back out. And the reason they actually engage their career into the programming field. If you want to see, there are lots of movies basically the attraction of the youth to attract towards programming. Apart from that, early engagement with the games is also one of the reasons that actually involves programmers to get it started with. Now this was about youth. Let's talk about why a particular middle-aged man or maybe a man beyond 30 should always give himself into programming. So before we dive into that, let's discuss the basic agenda as of this chapter. So the first agenda is understanding the nature of programming and why should you learn programming. The nature of the programming is pretty simple if you see. Until and unless you want to engage into some serious sort of programming or do very daunting tasks building different ERP solutions or building web apps, building cloud, building AI models, etc., the concept of programming is pretty simple. You have a problem in hand. You create steps to solve that problem. And you often somehow create repetitive or reusable stuff which could be used again and again to specifically solve that particular problem. For example, if we watch a TV, it's also based on different sorts of programs as well. Having said that, let's come to the point that why should a middle-aged person engage himself in programming? So we can see that in today's world, most of the people are engaged in corporate activities which involves interaction with any sort of IT contractor or IT professional frequently. And even you have to do sort of daily tasks, which are not entirely programming, but user-friendly programs which actually deals a lot with computers. For example, let's say spreadsheet programs, MS Word, MS Excel, or any sort of stuff, any web application, all of them have certain steps which need to be taken to solve your problem. Even if you're inserting a simple formula in your Excel sheet, that's also sort of a very basic level of programming, and that is why a middle-aged person should pursue. Apart from that, if you are at any age and you want to learn programming, what helps is programming is a philosophy which leads to life in a better way. It gives you a purpose to define your problems in each and every step more clearly than before learning programming and help you to solve them more efficiently than ever. So why should you engage yourself in programming? Either you are a young person or a middle-aged person, the basic purpose of programming is to let your life be as easy as much as it would be possible. So what I'm saying is today's world is actually surrounded by lots of computer stuff, programs, web applications, and a lot of other things. So if you want to be yourself a little bit useful in that particular scenario, learning programming of any sort could be very helpful. Now, as you might be thinking that programming is a pretty daunting task and there are lots of programming languages that doesn't seem to be crossing your mind at all. So how should I get started? So before we get into anything, let me define one of the most ease of programming. An easy to pick up programming language is Python, and which is also used for very complex tasks as well. So that's what we're going to do, and this is why all of our course is basically entirely dependent on Python. So we are going to learn Python over here throughout the semester course, and also we will try to define different sort of data analysis techniques and how they are achieved using Python. In our next tutorial, we are actually going to prepare in a moment to work on Python efficiently and without any problems, be it any sort of operating systems.